Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. It's been more than a year and a half since fire ripped through the historic Pringle Herbarium at the University of Vermont. At the time of the fire, the herbarium was the largest Vermont floral collection in the world and the third largest herbarium in New England, with species dating back to the early 1800s. So what was the fallout from the fire, and what's the status of the herbarium today? Rebecca Gollin spoke with a professor who's overseen the collection for 5 decades.
It was quite the day. I got a phone call from folks here saying the herbarium's on fire, which I didn't compute at first, and then I realized it was for real, so I headed out as fast as I could.
Plant biologist Dave Barrington is talking about the day that he thought he would see his life's work go up in flames.
And I got here to see the roof in flames, and my star volunteers were here, and they were absolutely in tears because the prospect at that point was of the whole building burning down and losing the entire natural history collections for the university in one morning.
Barrington has worked at the University of Vermont since 1974, coming here to the Torrey building every day. It's one of the oldest buildings on campus, originally serving as the university library and museum. Since the mid-70s, the building has housed the Pringle Herbarium, an expansive botanical collection used for reference and research. The third largest herbarium in New England, the Pringle houses over 350,000 specimens. At the time of the fire, an extensive renovation on the outside of the building and the roof was almost complete.
We had always known about some of the architectural appeal of the building, but the exterior renovation really brought those things out. The original mansard roof, which now sports the original colored slate, is a key feature. The window ornaments on the outside, which are unaffected by the fire but beautifully restored, is another.
The blaze started when a spark fell into an inaccessible area inside the roof. Most of the damage to the building came from the enormous amount of water used to put out the fire. Despite the dramatic-looking flames, most of the restoration was unharmed.
The good news was that the flames had been pretty much contained entirely to the inside of the roof and essentially never got inside the building.
Some of the collections had gotten wet. Barrington knew if he acted quickly, he might be able to save them.
It turned out we could salvage the collections that had gotten wet if we prepared them in a specific way and shipped them off to a firm that specialized in salvage of wet materials.
Once those specimens were on their way, the next challenge presented itself.
Then we heard from the structural engineers that all of the weight of the water in Torrey, along with the weight of the collections, led them to worry that the building might not sustain the additional weight. So they decided that we had to move all of the collections out immediately. And that led us to hiring Buska movers, and they brought cranes and 3 or 4 crews and moved everything. They cut a hole in the roof, moved a bunch of stuff out of the roof.
Barrington and his crew of scientists, student workers, and volunteers set up a temporary working space in the Jeffords building, and a renewed renovation continued on Torrey. Parts of the roof were repaired for a second time, and the interior was gutted. There were some pleasant surprises along the way.
We had always known that there was a beautiful arcade on the 3rd level, and that arcade has been exposed.
The work has exposed some features that will be covered up again, such as this 19th century brick chimney. But some elements will be incorporated into the interior redesign, like the tops of these pillars, which had been covered by a suspended ceiling.
Over here to the left is the Tryon Fern Library, which was a gift to the Pringle Herbarium about 10 years ago. And it's one of the largest collections of books dedicated to fern studies in the world. So the question would arise, just how much did we lose in the fire? And it's amazing how little we lost. We actually lost no animal collections, and we lost about 5,000 specimens of plants.
Barrington knows his loss could have been much worse. He credits the firefighters on the scene for helping to save the collections.
Well, the firemen were so effective in putting out the fire because they had actually responded to a false alarm in the building about 3 weeks before. Something that the renovation contractors did triggered a false alarm. And so the firemen showed up, and they actually went through the whole building at that time to make sure that nothing was amiss. So they had fresh in their memory the layout of the building, and they understood the value of the contents of the building and their vulnerability.
The renovation is expected to be done in the spring of 2020, and the hope is that the new building will serve as a hub for all of the university's natural history collections. And yes, there will be a sprinkler system. At the University of Vermont, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Our next segment reaches back into our archives. 5 years ago, we visited a Vermont pig farm with an owner who was looking to expand his business to meet demand. While farmers often rely on their own resourcefulness, it always helps to have an experienced set of eyes to look things over. Keith Silva was in East Hardwick when the teacher met the student.
Even on the hook, these pigs are in demand.
We do 5 farmers markets a week, and I cannot keep bacon and pork chops on the shelf. Grass farmer first, and then everything on top of that.
Ben Notterman and his parents, Helm and Nancy, run Snug Valley Farm in East Hardwick. The farm specializes in grass-fed beef and pastured pork. With the demand for local food continuing to increase, Ben is looking to go whole hog, so to speak.
A lot of other markets, there's not a lot of good pastured. I mean, there's some very good stuff, but there's not enough. So I want to try to fill that void. This is a learning process, learn as I go, kind of some of it seat of the pants, but I'm learning.
For every farmer in the midst of an expansion, necessity is the mother of invention. It also helps if a nationally renowned swine specialist is in the area and stops by for a consultation.
I mean, a severe parasite infection would set you back months.
Yeah.
They wouldn't reach the market weights. They'd just be infected. And then the other reason is the animal suffering. And I don't think we obviously don't want that. And so,
Dale Roseboom is an extension professor at Michigan State. His visit to Vermont is sponsored by the University of Vermont Extension's Center for Sustainable Agriculture and NOFA Vermont, the Northeast Organic Farming Association.
in Vermont, there is potential, great potential, and not that Vermont's going to become a major hog producer. Nope, wrong place in the country. But can Vermont produce pigs? Surely, and it's a matter of determining each farmer how much they can contribute to that in the number of hogs, how they can do it so it's economically viable for them. What I see is farmers with some excellent animal skills. I mean, as far as taking care of them. I see concern for the health and the well-being of the animals, concern about talking about vaccination programs. Do I need something to deworm pigs, to maintain their health and their well-being? And I see farmers taking strides to learn and want to improve. I see farmers utilizing resources very well.
In addition to visits to several hog farms, Roseboom is giving lectures and holding workshops on swine management. His approach to agricultural management is clear-cut. Farm with what works best.
It's not that one system fits all. It's that each system finds out what works best for itself. And I think that's the fun part about being here in Vermont and working with Vermont farmers is given this set of resources, given this set of abilities and skills, and combining that with my other demands, I might be a dairy farmer too. How can I raise pigs and do it right? And I just enjoy, helping find solutions and for a given situation. No one situation has to be exactly the same, and it isn't oftentimes. It really depends. It comes back to this topic of what breed of pig you're working with.
Roseboom advises farmers on genetics, nutrition, and nutrient management. Another topic that gets special consideration is what Roseboom calls the community or social aspect of farming.
We're talking then about raising pigs that meet the consumer's desired attributes. And so we'll talk a lot about genetic programs. Is this the correct breeding program to produce the pig that we want to produce? And here again, every farmer has a different set of customers. Some might be restaurants, some might be the farmers markets, some might then be selling directly to a CSA, and others might just be the consumers around them in their neighborhood. And so we're trying to then match nutrition, match genetics, and match the environment they have, the farm, to produce those pigs most effectively for them.
And then they know they've got a home for all of them, and everybody's happy.
Couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better.
Roseboom likes what he sees at Snug Valley Farm, especially when it comes to Ben's vision for the farm's future.
Ben's thinking systematically. He's thinking about the whole process and how systematically he starts pigs, he feeds pigs, and then gets them to a desired weight for butchering. Man, he's thinking. It's just fun to be around people that are like him, that are thinking of not just tomorrow, but he's thinking 5, 20 years down the road. He's a young man with just a lot of enthusiasm, so it's just a joy.
This is stuff I would never have gotten to.
For Ben, the feeling is mutual.
This is huge. This is a resource that I would never have been able to get my hands on, or talk to Dale, or it's just something that was out of my reach before, and I think it's really great. It's going to help us a lot.
It's good information that'll help these farmers and these pigs get to market. In East Hardwick, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
That's our program for today. Once again, thank you for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.